welcome back to 52 of my closest friends. I am here with my friend Emily. She's one of 3 Emilys. She just happens to be the first one that's recording. And we're in her bedroom upstairs with the box fan on because our dogs met and they don't like each other. And we have
Suki in the room
we
with
have
us.
Suki in the room with us. Those of you have come to know Suki as my dog, and she's real chill right now. But
She's being a good girl.
If we had combined all the animals in this room, y'all would not be enjoying this podcast right now. She lives just outside of Louisville, and I came over this weekend to go to World Fest, and I was like, hey, we should record a podcast while I'm here. And we've been super busy, and this has been like the first moment we've just been like, all right, let's just sit and chill and have a conversation.
I kind of had the idea that whenever you were going to come in town, like you were coming in on a Friday, stay until Sunday. I'm like, we'll do it Friday night. It's literally Sunday evening. Hannah probably needs to be heading back to home, and we're just now recording this, but it's been so fun.
It has. There was like at one point on Saturday morning, Friday night, however you want to look at that, where we were talking, and I told you, I was like, okay, stop. Remember this, because this needs to come back up when we actually have this conversation.
Yeah.
And ironically, we're sitting in the exact same seats that we were,
yes.
Which is like me on the floor
with your dog
plugged into the wall with my dog with her leash wrapped around my foot so that she doesn't go and eat your cat's food. And then you on the bed, real chill like. And so it has been super great and just such a good weekend. I always enjoy weekends. Okay, so why don't you tell everybody how we know each other? And I'll add my commentary as needed.
Right. So, Hannah and I know each other from going to the good old Oakland City University.
Woot!
Hannah was 1 grade older than me. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So, Hannah was already at Oakland City, when I joined. But I don't remember us becoming friends until your senior year. Because you were, like, my dorm mom.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when I remember us becoming friends, but I'm curious if you remember like us actually becoming friends, because I kind of don't have any idea. Like I can remember when it started to become like comfy and fun and like that this was going to be a friendship that I was going to have for a long time, but I don't remember us like meeting.
No, you guys coming in behind me, I was in the other dorm your first semester.
Yeah.
And then I became your RA that second semester. And, like, I remember lots of girls from your class and you all just kind of being all together. But I don't ever remember there just being, like, this is the moment that, like, I met Emily and things just became something,
Yeah. Which Oakland City's kind of like that because everybody knows everybody. And it's like, of course, we knew each other before we became friends. But I don't remember us actually becoming friends.
No. So I wrote down a couple of, like just bullet point memories.
Yeah.
And they are all from my senior year, like every single one of them. And I think
one of our memories would be the same.
Oh, for sure. Like for sure. And I think really it was my senior year. Like we had gone to school together for 2 years, and then us and like one of our friends, Ashley, the 3 of us just like, I think you 2 were friends first, maybe.
Yeah,
I was friends with Ashley, and then it was never that we weren't friends because it was Oakland City, but we just then became friends, and we started going to Denny's super late doing homework because we were all just trying to make it through that year together.
Good memories at Denny's.
Liz, for those without any sort of a concept of what Oakland City University is like, it's a town of 3,000 people. There was a Denny's that was open 24 hours a day. And so a lot of us would like go eat dinner in the cafeteria and then would just go sit in a booth at Denny's all night studying or working on homework, or just like not having another space on campus to be able to hang out because everything closed at a certain time. And so like there are so many Denny's memories, and honestly there are gonna be more people that I interview and you're gonna be like, what is it with this Denny's in Oakland City?
How many people have been to Denny's with Hannah? We need like a count.
Oh my gosh,
like one of those like count checkers.
Yes, like have some like a sound bite every time that I say Denny's. It's like bam, 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 bam. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure though me and you left one time and heard birds chirping when we is that written down?
I wrote it down. I wrote the bird chirp.
We stayed until literally the next day.
It like, I told somebody about this recently, that birds chirping in the morning with my windows open in the spring and fall, not a good memory for me, because by the time I was a senior, I was so tired that those birds chirping like hurt me physically, because I knew that my body should have been in bed. But yeah, I literally just wrote birds chirping down as a bullet point on this piece of paper.
I would know exactly what you meant.
Right. But I don't know why number one was I wrote down Caesar salad.
Oh, I was literally about to say that too.
Okay.
I'm like, is that funny enough for a podcast? But yeah, I think that's where we learned that like both of our like one of our go-to meals would be like a Caesar salad, French fries, and a Diet Coke.
Yeah.
And like it makes me laugh that that's like a meme now. Like I see it on people's reels and stuff like that, and I'm like, no, that's just me and Hannah at Denny's.
We've been doing that for over a decade, but nice try, y'all. Nice try.
Yes.
I also, it just so happens that literally all four of these revolve around Denny's, which just says so much about, we spent so much time there my senior year.
Yeah, we did.
I wrote Caesar salad, Denny's, birds chirping, and Freddie Raymond Dick.
Also a man we met at Denny's.
Let's just, I kind of,
You start with that story.
Oakland City being kind of just in the middle of nowhere, open 24 hours a day, you're going to get all different types of breeds of people coming in and out of here. And us two and our friend Ashley were sitting in this booth late one night, and the guy behind us ordered mozzarella sticks.
Ashley's go-to.
Yeah, which is Ashley's go-to. And it's been like a decade, so I don't remember all the details.
It became more of an inside joke than probably the memory really was.
Yeah, like the people who said what they said, they will never remember it.
No.
I don't remember what she said, but then how she said his name was like what we thought. Like, these people are literally right behind us in a booth. Like, you cannot, it's probably 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Everything is so funny, and it had just something with the mozzarella sticks. Do you know what she said?
No.
I don't remember what she said either, but it was just like, that's not how you order cheese sticks, Freddie Raymond Dick. And like, just like that. Like, the way that it was a 3-name, like he had 3 names, and she used all 3 of them in the same sentence, and
passionately.
I don't know that I've ever had to hold a laugh in harder in my life, because there's nobody that I don't want to get in a fight with more than somebody who's at Denny's at 2 o'clock in the morning that misordered cheese sticks.
Yes.
It's iconic. But here's the thing, is that like people listening to this are like, oh, like that's really, really funny. But at the same time, like, we all have these like little moments that are like, I will never be able to explain to you why this is hilarious.
No.
But that Denny's that night, and the guy behind us having his name yelled at him by the waitress.
Yes.
It's unbeatable. Like, if we texted Ashley right now, Freddie, she would respond Raymond, and then we would say Dick.
When you record with Ashley, all you'd have to say is Freddie, and she'll probably mimic it in that exact voice.
Yes, she will. And she may remember, because
hopefully Ashley does.
I hope that she does remember it, because she, like, things like that, she's really great at.
Are those all the ones you wrote down? Because it actually wasn't the one I first thought of.
What were you thinking of?
If I say this name, hopefully, like, similar to Freddie.
Yes!
Verleesh.
How did I forget?
That's kind of like, I knew we were friends before that, but when I think about, like, when was the memory where you're thinking, like, when did you and Hannah, like, no, this is, like, a long-haul friendship?
Yeah.
It would be that weekend of Verleesh. But I know we were friends before that. Like, I wouldn't have been hanging out with you having that deep of fun if we weren't friends before that. But that's, like, my big memory where I'm like, me and Hannah are going to be good friends.
Oh, that was...
And we weren't at Denny's. We were in your RA apartment.
We were in the apartment, and it was over Christmas break. You were on duty still. Mm-hmm. And listen, if someday there is a woman who got her doctorate at Oakland City University, and she had to argue her dissertation over Christmas break at the end of 2014, and you are listening to this, and your name is Verleesh, I just want you to know,
we've never forgotten you.
We will never forget you. Like, the fact that I didn't put it on here just shows you that it has. I'm still just overtaken with how much that meant to me. And
okay, so explain, or I can.
Okay, I will set like where we were. So, Oakland City, we've said this. There's not a lot going on. On over breaks, the cafeteria is not open, and so thankfully I was in an apartment at that time because I was the director of the dorm, and we were able to cook things. but we just really wanted some Chinese food. And
so badly.
We both kind of like, you had to have somebody in the dorm at all times in case whoever was there needed something, but neither one of us wanted to drive 20 minutes to the town over to go get Chinese food to come all the way back. It was cold, it was dark.
We're binging New Girl.
Yes.
No time to leave.
No. And so we're in my apartment. There also happens, this is the night of Oakland City's Christmas parade.
Didn't know that until we hear like a fire truck going.
And then
it was truly like magical.
Yeah, like
Christmas magical already. Oakland City's Christmas parade with Santa on like a train.
Yes.
Was just next level. I'm pretty sure we were like, we're in an actual Hallmark movie.
And of all the roads, it came up Franklin Street. Nothing ever came up Franklin Street because like they didn't see us as part of the town.
Yeah.
And so for them to go through Oakland City after the campus had closed, like
it was super cute.
It was very, very cute. And we were just like, I just want some Chinese food. Like genuinely wanted some Chinese food. And
like, did we not like be like praying for Chinese food?
Yes, we did. We were like, God, like, can you just bring us some Chinese food? Like, it's just what we want. We don't want to eat whatever Hannah has left over. And so then we're sitting in the apartment, and I always had like the door open, and there's a knock, and our girl Verleesh knocks on the door, and she's got this giant brown bag.
Also, truly, we didn't know Verleesh. It's
no,
not like she was like a girl in our dorm.
She was literally only there to stay in the dorm on the bottom floor in Mildred's hallway. That just to be able to like defend her dissertation. Like she was maybe there a week, maybe.
Yeah.
So she knocks on the door. She's got this brown bag, and she says, "Do y'all like Chinese food?" I'm not gonna say that there aren't moments where I'm just like, does God hear my prayers? But like that was a defining moment to me that I was just like, he does, and he cares about the little things.
Yes.
Because she wanted Chinese food also.
Yeah.
Drove all the way to Princeton, drove all the way back, and didn't realize that it was a buffet. So she ate there and brought what she ordered back to us. And
like a full...
I've never had egg foo young before that night.
I was just about to say it's the egg foo young. We're like, we've never even tried this. It was like the most giddy. Like giddy's the
Absolutely.
only word I can think of. Like we were like, can you on demand do your like excited squeal? Because that's like Hannah has an excited squeal. If
I have an excited squeal.
Yes, you get. It's like in the Need to Breathe concert video. Like after
my
you say,
like my laugh.
When you say like when you got to.
I did it again.
Yes. Yes, like that. And it's just like you get so excited that you like can't contain yourself. And
yes.
I can just picture us like opening the bag of Chinese food and being like, there's just so many things in it. We've never tried them. We both love to try different foods.
Yes.
And it was just so fun because we were like, we literally asked for this, and like now we have Chinese food. And the parade was going by, and we, like I said, we were watching New Girl, and it was just like one of the best nights.
Yeah. I don't know. My senior year was like, it was rough in a lot of regards.
Yeah.
And that night was just a really, really good end to a really hard semester. It was an answered prayer. It was a defining moment in our friendship.
Yes.
And the fact that like, she just came out of nowhere.
Yes.
Nowhere. Like,
wow, I don't even know. We were the only, was anyone else with us?
Here's the thing.
I think
that there was one other person with us, and the fact that I don't remember who it is really just shows how much this solidified our friendship.
We did not eat all of this food.
No, it was a lot.
But I just remember like I don't even know what Verleesh looks like. Like that's why she was so out of like nowhere that we were like, Verleesh is just like a little godsend.
Yeah, it really. Like I think it's one of my favorite stories to be like, oh, when was last, like, you know, when did God answer a prayer for you? And I was like, let me tell you about my angel Verleesh. I don't even know that this woman really existed. Maybe she didn't. Yeah. Maybe her purpose of being on earth was to answer. That really is negating everything she's done and the hard work she put into her doctoral program. And so I apologize. But
sorry, Verleesh, if you're listening.
If Verleesh, holler at me. Holler at me. Message me, DM me, talk to somebody, because I need to shake your hand. I need to thank you for what the last 10 years of joy in Chinese food has been able to bring to my life.
Because the funny thing about Hannah, too, is that when we get an inside joke, and in college we had a lot of them, anytime, like, even now, how long ago was that?
It would be 10 years this Christmas.
Okay, so 10 years ago. like Hannah has hung out with me all weekend. If she puts something on social media after this weekend, it'll just be like #Verleash. And we probably didn't even talk about her. It's
Nope.
just like all of Hannah's hashtags like would make no sense to anybody else, but like Verleash has stuck.
One of the things that I appreciate about Emily is that one, she's going to commit to a bit, and two, like when you've got an inside joke with Emily, it is trap locked, put a security button on it, like it's there for life, and it will always be funny. We will always be able to come back to it. And I just think about like those little moments, like Caesar salad, like it wasn't even significant. We were just eating Caesar salad at 3:00 in the morning. And like, why do I know that Ashley orders mozzarella sticks? It's because we did it 3 nights a week, and it just became like a thing, you know?
Yep.
And also, we did not mention that Hermione is in the room with us.
Oh, yes. My sweet angel cat.
We will have to post a picture of these two animals and Poe.
Yes.
Poe and Midnight will get a shout out.
Hopefully, if you're from Oakland City, you enjoyed that little flashback.
Yeah.
Of me and Hannah's time there.
And you know what? I think there can be an entire podcast done.
Oh, yeah. We could tell millions of
just
stories
about Oakland City.
And we were really only friends for 1 year of it.
And there are some stories we won't ever tell. They will stay locked and loaded because it's better for everyone if they do.
Yes.
This is what I wrote. I said Ben Rector and everything that has brought us, because
shout out to Ben Rector for the part of our friendship that came after Oakland City.
Yes. Like really, like legitimately right after Oakland City. I graduated and then we went to our first Ben Rector concert, and I have seen Ben on tour with Emily for every single one of his tours since 2015. Yeah. And the last 3 that we have seen him, we have been in his video in some way or another.
Yes.
Last year, did you stand on a chair?
Yes, with my giant water bottle flailing in the air like a flag. We will find ourselves in this.
Oh, absolutely.
In the video before that we were in, Hannah purposely wore a shirt.
Yes.
That was like very bright and colorful, so that when we're in like halfway to the back of the stadium, that we would notice the one like neon shirt.
Yes, and we did.
She's dedicated.
We were because
we found ourselves in both videos.
We did. Well, and then the one at the amphitheater also.
True.
We were in like a section, and your hand is there. We stood in the chairs.
Yes.
For those of you that don't know, Ben Rector does a video after every single one of his concerts, no matter where he's at, where they like bring all the house lights up and they take like just a very, very short little video of everybody, and that's just like a new thing now. Also, he's really wonderful, and I think about what those Ben Rector concerts have meant to me versus what they mean to you, and how for like now 10 years of our life we have seen 4 different I think we've seen him 4 times together. And how like each one of those has ended up with like there being like a weekend where like I come here and we hang out, or we drive all the way to Florida to see him twice, you know. And both in like good and bad ways, you know what I mean? Like those have become like really, really great weekends of life. And I don't know. I think that it's interesting, the things that you don't expect to be like monumental really, really turn out to be something. And
honestly, it's a great idea if you're somebody who's like looking for tips on making friends. Find somebody who like you like similar music with and go to that show with them. And then it's like it gives me and Hannah, like we always want to reconnect anyway, but when you live like 2 hours apart, it's not hard to see each other, but you have to be intentional about the friendship. And it's so fun to kind of be like, every time Ben Rector goes on tour, it's like me and Hannah are going to get to see each other now, and it's fun. So if you have somebody that like you enjoy the similar music as, it's just like make that like your thing, and then every time they're on tour, like you're like this built-in reason to hang out too. It's fun.
Last year in the spring, I saw that he was going to be playing at this music festival in Florida with Need to Breathe, which we have also seen in concert together now twice. And it was like literally an immediate yes. I texted her and I said, "Are we going to this?" And she was like, "Yep." Like
you're like, "I guess we're going to Florida."
Yeah, like this is happening. And
best trip ever.
The best trip. We went with our friends Sarah Jane and Emily. No. You're Emily. Ellen. There's too many E's.
One of our Oakland City professors used to call me Ellen, and I never corrected him.
Who was it?
Dr. Walls.
Oh, I was like, you better call Thomas, the man who can't spell covenant.
He eventually got it right. It was just like every once in a while he would say Ellen, which now I've grown. I would correct someone if they were calling me the wrong name, but it was just funny. Every once in a while he would call me Ellen, and I'm like, yes, sir. That's me.
Oh, Thomas Walls, man. Thomas Walls.
He was awesome. I loved him.
Yeah. I would echo that. I think that even, like, I think that if for some reason there had been a time when, like, we didn't have the verliche, we didn't have the Caesar salads, but, like, we had just had that, like, mutual, like, enjoyment of Ben Rector, that one weekend a year, you know what I mean? Yeah. I feel like really just refuels everything. Because, like, we're both, like, kind of busy people. We have people in our lives that are priorities, but there really is just something cool about having, like, an anchor that is an intentionality for us to, like, get together, which Ben's not on tour this year. So instead we went to World Fest, which was delicious. Yeah. Emily, what is something that you're passionate about?
Okay. So what I'm going to answer with first is not what we almost talked about the other night, but I'll bring it back up because it's more of like a current day passion of something that I've like learning and growing in. But like my passion that has kind of stuck with me over time, and I feel like kind of like defines a little bit of like what I see as like my purpose a little bit. I don't love that term too much, but I feel like something that I'm very, very passionate about is trying to help people not feel alone. And or just like when you think about that thing that just like really tugs at your heartstrings or just like makes you like really sad, and that you want to be able to like kind of be a part of like helping people go through, it just like really, really breaks my heart when I think of people who feel alone or just like not wanted, not chosen, not seen, just like that feeling that people have of kind of like not being important or special. And so a lot of that manifests in children because that's where most of the time that is rooted, if they felt that way as a child. And so some of the things that come up from that I would be passionate about is like Honduras, for example. If people don't know much about me and Hannah, or you don't know me at all, one thing that me and Hannah did together was travel to Honduras, and we were at a children's home there. And so while I haven't been back to Honduras and done those kind of things in a while, that's still like very much everything that like I go through that I find to be my passion about has kind of circled around to what I learned there, and just kind of learning that those children may have felt unwanted or unimportant or not special, and I can find times in my life where I can remember like just how devastating that feels when you kind of feel like maybe I'm not that important to people, or maybe you just kind of feel alone. And so I think something that I'm really passionate about for a very long time and moving forward is just kind of trying to find ways to connect with people, whether that be like people having somebody to sit with when they're at lunch, like when you're a little kid and you feel like you have nobody to sit with at lunch, to like much bigger things like being involved with foster care, and helping children who quite literally sometimes are kind of pushed around and feel unwanted. So in the big things and the small things, I feel like I'm very passionate just about helping people see that they're very loved.
I want you, because I think that you're great, and I know that group message the other day, you were like, oh no, stop it, and she's genuine. But I think that the foster care thing that I just learned about you the other day is super, super cool. Do you mind sharing what you do with that?
Sure. So there's an organization that is called Cake for Kids. If you want to look it up, it's Cake, the letter 4, and then Kids. It's an organization that it's actually not super prominent in my area. It's from, I think a lot more of it started in California actually, but people open their own kind of like chapters. And so there's a chapter that's called the Central Kentucky chapter. And at first I was like, oh, I'm not going to be able to do this because I'm not technically in Central Kentucky. I'm in Southern Indiana. So I'm like, I'm not sure how much I'm going to be able to be involved in this. But I kind of kept looking into it. And essentially what this organization does is they work with children who have caseworkers, and if this child has a caseworker, doesn't necessarily mean that they're in foster care. Sometimes their mother was in a bad situation and now they're in like a women's shelter, so they do oftentimes have parents, But sometimes they're in a women's shelter, sometimes they're in a homeless shelter, sometimes it's through trafficking or abuse, whatever situation where a child may have a caseworker, and they're in a situation where no one's going to be baking them a birthday cake. The caseworker can upload the child's request to what's called the baker's portal, and then I'm able to go in to the website, look what cakes are kind of being requested. Like there's a child who wants Thomas the Train birthday cake, or there's a girl who just wants a cookies and cream cake, whatever it might be, and you can sign up to be the one to make that child that cake. And so I'm really thankful that there is a chapter that has cake deliveries that's in Louisville. And so I love that organization, because one thing about me is I love to bake.
She does.
And so I think it's just so fun when you can find something that you love to do, which it's cliche, it shouldn't be, but it's cliche to like find that thing that you love to do for fun, and then the thing that kind of breaks your heart, and put them together.
Sure.
It's kind of obvious, I feel like, to a lot of people now, but it's really cool when you actually find that. Like, it's a cool thing to say, let's do that. But then when I'm like, I love to bake, and I love to share the things that I bake with people. And so to be able to like have my heart break for kids who probably don't feel that loved or didn't feel special, and then to be able to like just do something fun, like baking a cake is so fun to me. But then knowing that like a little kid who probably thinks they're not going to get a cake that day, or doesn't have parents that are like celebrating them, is going to be able to get this cake. And so, yeah, I recently started doing that, and I love it.
I just think that that's super selfless, because I'm a big fan of birthday cake as it is, but I just think that it's amazing that there are like-minded people who are like, I have this skill and a passion. Like, I think that so many times, myself included, you try to take your skill and turn it into your passion, but like it's sometimes like they can be separate. Sometimes they work together. Other times people are just using that skill to make money. Other times there are people like you that are using it to like actually change people's lives, and I think that's really awesome. You said something a little before that along the lines of like maybe not trying to like build your life around it, you know, but like I know how much my 2 trips to Honduras have changed my life, and they were a decade and 9 years ago, respectively. And I mean, I'm not saying that I get up every single day and I'm just like, wow, like here's how Honduras changed my life today, because it's not Honduras, it's what God did through Honduras, and how he opened my eyes and found the parts of me that realized that I needed to ask a lot more questions than just assuming that I know everything about everything. But I do know that there are practical things that were brought from that. And so like when you say like maybe not build your life around it, but like how do you feel like, you know, whether it's this passion of not letting people be alone, or this passion of like, I mean, I guess it's the same thing of like baking cakes, like that child in that day is not going to feel alone. They may never know you, they may never know that your name, but they don't feel alone that day. Somebody cared about them. Like you're not baking a cake every single day, you're not thinking about Honduras every single day, but like how do you feel like you build your life around those principles? Yeah,
so I think that when I look at what I need to be doing more, it's to strangers. Like it needs to be to children in foster care that I didn't know existed before. It needs to be to like elderly people who live by themselves that don't have anyone like showing up for them. Those are the people that I need to like do more for. But in my everyday life, I feel like I don't like to toot my horn very much, but
toot it.
If I do this in my everyday life, I would feel like it would be in very, very simple things, like talking to a coworker and they're like, oh, we're having a cookout tomorrow. And I'm like, oh, okay, have fun. And then when I see them again on Monday, say, how'd that cookout go?
Sure.
And they remember that I thought about it. And I don't try to be like, remember that and remember to ask them on Monday. I think like it's become a practice where I try to be a good listener, or like be intentional about remembering what they said they were doing. And so I think that's just like such a small thing to like make people feel like seen or special or important, that you like told them something and then remembered it, because it would mean something to me. Like if I'm like, oh, I'm doing this weekend, then someone said, hey, how'd that go? I'm like, they actually listened or like cared. So I feel like making my life, like, I don't remember exactly how you worded the question, but kind of like building my life around it, essentially. I would like to continue to do that more when it comes to people that I don't know. But in my everyday life, it's just like sending somebody a card when they said they were having a hard day, or following up on a conversation that you had, and letting somebody know that like you heard them, you see them, that somebody cares about them.
Yeah. I think from like what I know about you, that it's very much of like, I'm going to treat others the way that I want to be treated, but not because this is an expectation that they will treat me that way. But like, if I want people to see me and to acknowledge me, why am I not looking and acknowledging other people? You know, like I think that what you're saying, really is just like the simple, like the humble equation to that, you know, because like myself included, I'm so petty sometimes. I'm like, I'm going to do something nice for that person, that I'm going to be like upset when they don't do something for me, you know, which like, I'm not saying that you don't have those moments of feeling like you really put your neck out there.
It always feels good to get it back.
Absolutely.
I don't know the exact quote. I need to look it up, but there is a quote by someone. If I can find it while we're recording this podcast,
These are my favorite.
It's not one of my favorites. It just came to my mind whenever we were talking about this, and it was a quote that says something along the lines of, like the thing about love is that giving it doesn't, I need to know the exact quote. It doesn't rest on reciprocity.
Yeah.
That like you can give love. It feels good, but I never regret like showing somebody love and then being like, oh, that was a bad idea. So that's always kind of my basis, where I'm like, oh, like what if this never comes back to me? It hurts. Like it definitely hurts. But it was not wasted.
Yeah. Reciprocity is something I think is going to be a pretty familiar theme with these interviews and these conversations, because I struggle with things not being reciprocated, because I find myself being a very intentional person. And so a lot of times I don't have your viewpoint of like, this is not going to be wasted love. Like it's a very much of an approach of like, I want to invest in something, and if it doesn't feel like it's going to be a return on my investment, I'm not going to do it. And I'm like envious of people who are willing to just be like, I'm going to love this person. I'm going to go through this situation, even if I don't get anything from it. And, I think that that's super encouraging, because I'm typically not that way. Because to me, it feels like I would be wasting my time, when honestly, like, not to hyper spiritualize it, it's not my time. You know what I mean? And there have been so many times where I have looked back on a situation and thought like, man, I should have really just taken the extra step to be there for that person. But in that moment, I couldn't see past maybe just like what my agenda was, you know? And I think that that's super honorable. One of the things I like had this in my thing to mention earlier. I don't know how many of you have ever played the like, oh, well, I really, really love so-and-so game, but you know what I mean? Like, I think that they do that in like Friends and like New Girl, where they have like this episode where they like are like, oh my gosh, I love this person, but they do this and it's the most annoying thing in the world. And this is not like, Emily didn't pay me to do this. She didn't like hold me against my life. When I was making notes about this the other day, I was like, I've been friends with Emily for over a decade of my life, and if I was going to play the game, like, I love Emily, but like, there are no buts. Like, there are no buts. And it's not because I think that you are this perfect person, or it's not that because I've like put you on this pedestal. I just think that I've seen like so many different seasons of who you are. Yeah, for sure. And each one of them has just been so much like better than the one before it, you know, like they've all been great. Because like, I know that you're a human, you know, and I think that like the longer that you're friends with someone, like, those like walls that you never even knew that you put up just slowly start to fall down, and so more of yourself is shown. And I'm just like, I don't know what I don't like about Emily. Like, I'm serious, and it's not that I'm like sitting here thinking like, man, I gotta really come up with something that I don't like about Emily. But I think that it really is just a true reflection of the fact that like, you're just a very selfless person. And I think like, you have put yourself and have continued to like lay yourself down for other people in your life that I would have been like yeah, I'm done. You know what I mean? And I think that there's just something really inspiring about the fact that like you are just a very selfless person, but you're also like just, you know, like you're not just like letting people walk all over you.
I have, but I'm learning.
You have, and you are learning, and I think that, not that there would have ever been a but I think that there's probably been a time that I would have been like, man, like I wish she would have stood up for herself. But now that you're standing up for yourself, I'm like, I don't know what it is. She's too nice. That's what it is. Yeah. I love Emily. I like Emily. She is my friend, but she is too nice. Like, and I don't even know that that's really it. You know what I mean? Because I don't want this to be framed as like, I have Emily on this pedestal and that she can do no wrong, because like she's a human. Like we're all flaws. But I think that, like for people who know Emily, like legitimately just know that like her intentions are just really great. I mean, even yesterday we had like a separate conversation about like each one of your siblings just throughout the day. Yeah. And every single time she's like, I don't know, they're just the best. And then the next conversation, they're just the best. And then the next conversation, they're just the best. She's got 5 siblings. Every single one of them are the best. And I don't think that you can like really see the best in other people if you don't have like the best of intentions yourself. And so I think that the way that you care about people really just shows how, one, like how much like you have grown, you know. Yeah. But secondly, like it's just not selfish, you know, like you're not loving people selfishly, and that is something that I would say probably 90% of the population is not good at. And so I'm super envious that you are now able to stand up for yourself and still be loving, because I don't know that those don't coexist in my brain. I'm either standing up for myself and I'm gonna, or others, and I'm gonna walk over somebody, or I'm just gonna like love people and like turn my eye to something. And so
it's actually a very interesting lesson, that one of the things that I've had to learn how to do, and it feels extremely uncomfortable to me, and I'm still like kind of trying to figure out what that balance is in like the last year, 2 years, is to take care of myself, to stand up for myself, to see that I have value, even if I'm not giving to somebody, even if I'm not doing something for somebody, like I can have value. And so I struggle a lot with that. I have learned to do that, and that it feels selfish. And so I need to learn that it doesn't have to be like, okay, well that, you know, that person said this or that about me, and then I kind of told them that they were wrong, and then I'll feel like, well, that was kind of selfish. And then I'm trying to learn that it's not selfish to think highly of yourself, or to stand up for yourself, or to invest in your own self. Yeah. It can be a good thing, but if you are somebody who like is extremely empathetic and like feels other people's feelings very deeply, it's hard to not give up a lot of yourself in order for that person to not be sad. Yeah. Because it makes me incredibly sad myself to think of somebody else being sad. So I kind of want to like do whatever I can to make that person not feel sad. Yeah. But then I was never doing that for myself. If I was extremely sad or being mistreated or anything along those lines, I didn't do what I do for everybody else for me. Yeah. And so it feels selfish to do that stuff for me, but it's so important, because now that I've learned to do that, I do think I'm, like you kind of mentioned, like you've seen me through a lot of seasons, and I do hope that it is that I keep getting better. And it's weird that I added a little bit of selfishness into the mix, and I feel better. Like it doesn't feel like that made me a worse person. It just feels like I finally like can show up as a better version of myself because I think more highly of myself. Yeah. It's not that like I'm too like focused on myself all the time, but if you're not focused on yourself at all, you're not doing that much of a service to other people. Sure. Either, because you're kind of abandoning your own self to make sure that nobody else ever feels that way. Yeah. Yeah. I don't like people to feel abandoned, but I was doing it to my own self. So I think it's a hard lesson to learn.
It feels selfish when it's you looking at it from your perspective. Yeah. But like for those of us that like know you, you're like, no, like it's not selfish. Like it's a true reflection of like growth and being able to understand that like you have value, and not that you didn't think that you had value before, but you just know how to articulate your value, you know? Yes. Like even there was something that you did yesterday when we were walking around World Fest, and like you were just like very decisive, and you're like, no, we're gonna do this, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love it. I love it so much. And like and not like to just make it this like this huge deal, but like I mean, really, 10 years ago, if we would have gone to World Fest, you would have been like, I don't know, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to do, whatever
Yeah.
you want to do. And you were just like, no, like, I really want to go to that grassy area and over there. And I'm like, I want to walk around. And I was like, okay, let's do it, you know? And it doesn't feel selfish for you to like have
Wants and needs.
Yeah.
It's
like
good for me to I
for
do have
you
wants
to
and
have
needs, yeah.
them. I think that's important. And it's really great to be able to see that. Because I don't know, like we talked a lot this weekend, like a whole lot.
Yeah.
But I think that there is just something too about the fact that, not that like you were just like this like sad person before,
Yeah.
but I know that there were times where you were for sure muted by other people.
Yes.
Not because they intentionally muted you, like you may have even thrown your own mute button on because you were just like, what's the point? Someone's not going to hear me. Or like, I think it was very much like for those of you who are maybe quieter and you tell a joke to the room, but the room doesn't hear you. And then the person, I'll just say myself because I do this a lot. I hear the joke and I'm like, oh, that's really funny. I'm loud, so I'm going to say it. And then everybody's like, ha ha ha, Hannah's so funny. And then I like turn and like try to give credit to the person. But it just doesn't hit the same way, you know? And I feel like I've been able to like see a lot of joy through you in that, you know, like getting to like watch you be excited about things and take moments that were really, really hard for you and turn them into joyful moments, you know? Like even like just last year going to that Ben Rector concert, like you came out on the other side of that feeling a lot better than what you did. And like, there was just so much joy in that. And I think that that's where it's evident that it's not like self-seeking, you know, that the fruit that has come from this has not been like, oh, Emily's turned into this really terrible person. Like, it's actually like she's just a better version of an already great thing, you know?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think too that like a really important lesson that I've learned is that you kind of have to sit with somebody where they are instead of like teaching them a lesson before they're ready to hear it.
Yeah.
'Cause like say Hannah has been doing a lot of work on herself too that I don't know how much we'll hear in the podcast if you're going to be able to share a lot of your story as well. But Hannah's had like a lot of amazing self-growth and just like things that she maybe wasn't so happy with that now she's like grown to accept and even like appreciate. And it's really cool to see. And I think that like maybe Hannah learned that lesson before me. And so she saw me going through a hard time and probably knew, like she could have known. Let's say, for example, that I was going through a really hard time. Hannah knew kind of a solution to that, and she could have told me right then. But if I'm not ready to hear that lesson, then it doesn't mean all that much.
Yeah.
So I think now the concept of being alone is actually not scary to me anymore.
Yeah.
And so it's funny that like something that breaks my heart and that I kind of am passionate about protecting people from, I now know it's nothing to run from. Like being alone or feeling like you're by yourself or feeling like some of those feelings that I described earlier I'm really passionate about. I've kind of experienced those and realized that they can be kind of a beautiful thing. Like being alone is not so horrible. Like it's really, truly not. But I can think back to those moments where I felt completely alone or abandoned or any of those like horrible, hard feelings. And in that exact moment, it's like cripplingly devastating. Like it feels like just excruciatingly painful. But if someone came up to me and they're like, actually being alone is a beautiful thing. And I'm like, no, like right now that it feels absolutely horrible. But somebody else could have known that lesson, told it to me in the midst of like when I'm in the deepest of my pain.
Yeah.
And I wasn't ready to hear it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really important to not just try to teach somebody else a lesson that you've learned when they're kind of in like the midst of the hardest of their pain.
Yep.
And I've kind of learned that a lot through my therapist. And so I'll make a push for therapy first really quick and then share what my therapist taught me.
Absolutely.
Because I think that a lot of people, like therapy is becoming a lot less taboo. Would you agree?
Yeah.
But I also think that there's still like this concept that you probably need to be diagnosed with something.
Yeah.
Like if you're not struggling with depression, struggling with like anxiety that is like unlivable, But you're not going to go to see a therapist unless it's like you're really going through something basically so life-threatening that you have to go see a therapist. And I wish more people would go see a therapist before they get to like this life-threatening, crippling like moment.
For routine maintenance, as opposed to needing a new
Suki's trying to jump up on the bed at me.
Suki, stay down. It's okay.
Okay, so yes, exactly what you're saying. Because I actually started going to therapy because I was the support person for someone who was in kind of a life-threatening situation. Mm-hmm. And so people kind of saw me doing what we described earlier, like giving so much that I stopped caring for myself. Like I loved this person so much that like I didn't mind to like basically stop putting any care towards myself so that I made sure that this person was going to be okay.
Yeah.
And but then people saw me, they saw me kind of like losing myself a little bit, or just like realizing that I was supporting this other person, but that I needed support as well, because it's just a hard thing to go through to see somebody that you love suffer. And so I actually did not go to therapy at all thinking that it was going to be for me. I went to therapy being like, okay, everyone's telling me like it's really hard to be this person supporting somebody else who's sick. Like, that's really hard, and everyone tells me that like that's really hard to be the person supporting someone who is like very sick. So that's why I was going. And so my very, very first session with my therapist, like we both laugh about this and talk about it like pretty often. And we introduced ourselves, we talked, and she was like, okay, we've been talking for 45 minutes and you've never mentioned yourself once. And I was like, yeah, I know. I'm here because this person's sick. And like, she was like, oh, okay. And in that moment, I've been seeing my therapist for like 3 years now. Like we've seen each other a lot.
Yeah.
And, it's just interesting because we can talk about it now where she's like, I knew exactly what I needed to teach you that first day, that like you don't put, like enough of that care into yourself. Like, but she knew that right then, that I was talking like, well, how can I support this person? What am I going to do? How do I, like, rooted in this fear, how do I make sure I don't lose them? How do I make sure that they don't leave me? How do I make sure that, like, everything with this person is going to be okay? And 3 years later, like, I'm learning that all of these lessons that she knew day one, when she heard me talking so, like, fervently about this other person, and completely having no identity that I mattered at all. As long as this person mattered, I was fine. Just like that codependent relationship that, like, as long as they were good, I'd be good. Yep. But I wasn't really, like, knowing who I was. And so, like, 3 years later, we're doing all this work on, like, me learning who I am and learning that I'm valuable and that being alone is okay and that losing people, like, you can basically live with grief. And that... I don't know, just a hard lesson to learn too, but it's really cool to think that I went to that therapist solely for somebody else. Sure. And almost 4 years later, I'm still going, and like, I'm just now hearing something that she already knew I needed to hear back then. Yeah. So just kind of a cool note to think, like, if you are trying to help somebody who's going through something really hard, maybe you've already gone through it, to kind of just be with them in that moment. Like, I live with grief every day from losing somebody that was so special to me. And so I think it's hard to, like, now see somebody who is going through grief and wanting to tell them, like, what to do. Sure. When I'm like, they're not 2 years removed from that grief yet. And so just a cool lesson to learn that, like, one, therapy is really awesome. Even if you're not diagnosed with something, you do not need to have, like, to this day, I've never been diagnosed with something. Highly encourage it as well if you are diagnosed with something, and know that it's completely not your fault, that you have that, and that it's amazing to get help. But also don't feel like if you're going through a really hard time, whether it's your fault, somebody else's fault, whether it's grief, whether it's anything, whether you are like supporting a sick parent or whatever it might be, that therapy is really important. And I would hope that somebody who maybe is on the edge of thinking that it's just not for them. Sure. Or that it probably wouldn't be helpful, they're not sick enough, or they're too sick, that it could be for you. Yeah.
I actually just texted this last week, and I, like, texted the person that I see for therapy, and I was like, where do I have to buy lunch so that I can have a conversation with my therapist? Because you just, I feel like until you start seeing someone, you don't realize kind of like what you're missing out on, you know?
Yeah.
And there is not one person in my life who has gone to therapy and done the homework and has done the self-reflection, has done the conversations in the mirror, had the hard conversations, that has not come out on the other side of it a better person. Like,
Yes.
And I'm thankful that, like, we are moving in a direction of society is like, it's no longer like, oh, you see a therapist. It's like, oh, you see a therapist. I need one. Let me send you their information.
Yeah.
And I think one, that it's very, very telling of just like your nature. You know what I mean? That like week one, she was like, yeah, we have a long way to go. We have a long way to go, but also like she was like, we're gonna do it. You know what I mean? Like, she day one was like, not that like, oh, I want to fix you. She's like, I want to help you feel healed. Like, and I want you. And her intention.
And she only told me when she knew I was ready to hear it.
Yes.
Because I had to come to the conclusion that this was something I needed to do. If she just said, Emily, you need to like really start caring about yourself and investing in yourself and seeing that you're really important, I'd be like, I'm not there.
Yeah.
And so that would have fallen on deaf ears.
Yeah.
So that's cool too, to just think that she knew when she could see when I saw it. And then she's like, now's the time to teach you this lesson because you would know that it's time.
Yeah. You even said something to me the other night when we were having a conversation, and like, your perspective is probably the best perspective that I would be able to receive that information from, you know, because like, I'm looking at it objectively on my end thinking like, this was really, really great. But like, your perspective was like, it could have been really, really great. And that's why it's not happening, you know? And, not that these therapists just have these like magical prescriptions, but like, they just have studied people. And when you are like taking that step and being able to be like, even like you didn't go to therapy to start for you, you know what I mean?
And I
like,
never would have. I didn't think I needed it.
No, because you've never been diagnosed with something.
No.
And I think that you went in with that very selfless intent, you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to go to therapy so that I can help this person that I love, when actually like, you would not have been able to go to therapy because you didn't realize that you didn't give yourself enough self-love, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that it's like, not just that therapy, but also just because I know that you as a person, like, you internalize things so much and you sit with things, and I mean, you don't
I feel my emotions very deeply.
Yes.
And I think about things very deeply.
Yeah, but you also like do them rationally. Like,
I hope.
I mean, I would like to think that you're not an irrational person. I mean, I don't know what you would do for like a Diet Coke situation, you know? Like, what would you do for Klondike bar? Emily would do just about anything for a crispy Diet Coke. But I think too, like, I don't know, hearing your conversation and like this conversation and the way that you see things now as opposed to 2021, there's just like a weight, you know, like there's been a weight that's lifted, and it hasn't been gradual, or it's been gradual. It wasn't immediate. And
another good point of something about therapy is that it's not really something that you graduate from. Because I don't know, I never would have thought when I started therapy when I did that like 3 years later I would still be going, because like you kind of go through a really hard time and you know that you need that person on those moments where you're like, you kind of feel like you're not going to make it. Like I've had these times where like my grief was so like crushing and crippling that I was like, I have to talk to her today because like I'm just not going to be okay. Like I can't live with this grief. Like if anybody's gone through grief, like, you know, the feeling that I'm talking about, just like losing somebody, it's absolutely like terrifying to think of living in the world without them. Mm-hmm. And so grief is so hard. But then when you think like, okay, well, once I get through that, which you don't really get through grief, you live with grief. But like I thought in my mind, well, once I get through this, I'm not going to like see her anymore. Mm-hmm. And even now, like we went from meeting once a week to now we meet once a month. And I think it's cool that like sometimes I'll get on there and I'm like, nothing tragic happened this month. I didn't nothing big happened this month, but then we still for the entire hour have plenty to talk about.
Sure.
And afterwards I'm like, I have so much growing to do. And it's just cool that it's not necessarily something that you're like, I'm gonna do this for a year and then I'm gonna be so much better, and then like I'm gonna graduate from therapy. You don't get like a diploma. Like it's kind of like something to keep doing. And also, this was a conversation that I had with one of my brother-in-laws that I thought was so cool because he helped me articulate something that I didn't know how to articulate. And it's kind of like, it's not really like a joke, but there's like a very common phrase that you might hear when someone says like, oh, like shopping's my therapy, or any number of things that they're like, oh yeah, I do that and it's like therapy, or I went to the movies and that movie was like therapy because it made them feel good. Like they go shopping and it kind of made them feel good. To me, therapy, this was what my brother-in-law said that helped me so much. He said it's like a workout. And that's exactly how I feel, because after you finish a workout, you have endorphins. You kind of feel good. But also, like, did you want to go to the workout? Like, unless you love working out, there's people who will listen to this that, like, you do get excited to go. But, like, a general consensus, like, it's hard.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to get out of breath. You're going to get exhausted. You're going to get sore. You're going to get tired. But, like, you also grow stronger. You also, like, have endorphins after it. You feel good that you did something good for yourself. But, like, no one really, I mean, some people, no one really goes to a workout and was like, that made me like,
that's why pre-workout exists,
yeah,
and so that people
to go do something
can hype.
They don't really want to do. And so it gets under my skin a little bit knowing like the amount of hard work that I've had to put into therapy, and the amount of times like we're crying and we're talking and like I get done with therapy, that's the night, like, I love to cook for myself, similar to baking. Like, I love making meals for just myself, which is a very far way to come. I remember when I was cooking for more than one that I loved it, and then I realized the night that I was going to have to start cooking for one, and I just, like, drove and was, like, bawling my eyes out because I was like, I'm not going to be able to do that. Like, I only know how to cook for 2 people, and again, cripplingly devastating, as sad as that sounds. Like, like now looking back, I'm like, that wasn't that big of a deal, but in that moment it hurt so bad.
It was,
to be
though.
Like, because one thing that I hear from so many people is that they're like, oh, well, my husband was out tonight, so I didn't really cook. Or someone's like, oh, well, those are the nights that I don't cook, and it's the nights they're by themselves. And I'm like, well, if I'm by myself, I guess I'm not worth cooking for. And now I love it. Like, I love making myself fancy meals, and, like, it's so fun. But anyway, I got off topic.
Let me just tell you, though, as a single person who also enjoys cooking and thinks about all the leftovers they're going to have to eat later on during the week, I'm like, for people who are not or people who do not live alone, you know what I mean? Like, they have that thought in their head, but there's also the, like, no way. Like, I get to eat what I want to eat and what I want to cook, and knowing that there are other people who also feel that way, it's super uplifting.
And it's just one of those ways that, again, I'm learning. I'm important enough to make a meal if it's just for me.
Yes.
Like, I don't have to be like, well, it's just for you, so you don't need to make you something good. You can just eat whatever, because no, you're not making it for someone else's enjoyment. Which is what my whole life had always been like. You're going to make this amazing meal because somebody else is going to get to eat it, and I love that person and I want to make them happy. But then when you don't have a person to share something with, you're like, well, I'm not really worth making it for just me. And now I'm like, I am super like worthy of making myself an enjoyable meal the same as somebody else. So I'm forgetting why I got on that topic. We were talking about therapy, how you don't graduate from it.
You just keep going and you just keep improving. And you were on the vein of like you have like seen this gradual change, and that even if you haven't talked to her in a month, the workout thing.
Okay, so yes, if you like, I don't know, like it's just it's hard work. So I can imagine like how much hard work that I've put into therapy that I like. It's like that workout. It's strenuous. Like those. I remember how I got into the cooking thing.
Yes.
On the nights I do therapy, thank you guys for bearing with me. The nights that I have therapy, I don't cook for myself that night. I'm like exhausted after it. It's like I've done a HIIT cardio workout. Like I don't work out on the days that I have my therapy. I don't cook for myself on the nights I have therapy. Like, I know that like after my therapy sessions, I'm like, my therapist helps me, like, we go through it. Like, we're digging up really painful memories of, like, a hard time I went through. We're going through, like, where those painful memories came from. Like, it's really heavy work, and it's nowhere near, like, people's cliche of, like, well, they need to go to therapy, or, like, oh, well, I just, like, do this for therapy. And I'm like, therapy doesn't necessarily just, like, do something that makes you feel happy.
Yeah, it's not a fix.
Sometimes
Like, it's not a just a turn off and turn it back on reset.
Or someone's like, well, did it make you feel better? And I'm like, no, but 3 years from now, what we talked about, I'm not going to struggle with anymore.
Sure.
And so, I don't know, not to get on that whole soapbox for too long, but I just think that if I can advocate for somebody to get that help, then I want to do that.
Hey friends, I know this is a little bit of a rough cut, but just bear with me. Mine and Emily's conversation was so good, and you just listened to part 1. Part 2 is going to be out in a couple of days. As opposed to doing one long, almost 2-hour episode, I thought that it would be best to break it into 2 parts, and this was maybe the best part for that break to happen. So I hope you enjoyed the episode. Emily has an incredible story, and getting to see this first part and to watch the development of our friendship, I think that you can see, like, she's just amazing, and she has a lot of insight and a lot of wisdom that somebody at our age maybe shouldn't have to have. But I have, as I have all the other ones, enjoyed going back and listening to this, and I hope that you will come back and you will listen to part 2 in just a couple of days. But as always, thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you soon.